Evening viewers, welcome to another edition here of Scoreboard here on ACTN. It's always a pleasure every Tuesday evening between the hours of 8 to 9 p.m. We bring you the news, the views, and all the interviews. Tonight, we will continue our regular update and try to highlight the sport of rugby. You know, from time to time, we have been trying to do different interviews with the sport of rugby because we believe that rugby is one of the sports that is not getting the recognition that is needed. So we here at ACTN found it, to do our part by ever so often bringing you a show dedicated strictly to the sport of rugby. Now, before I get into that, I just want to say a big shout out to the people of Marak in Moruga. Now, I never knew that Scoreboard had such a big following in Marak until I went up about 2 weeks back to the TTOC sports talent program that they put on up at the Marak Recreation Ground. And big shout out to young Romario Patrice, a young budding upcoming footballer who pays special attention to Scoreboard. Again, welcome. As I said, we're talking rugby tonight, but before I get into that, my co-host Maria, just back from a world tour. Maria, tell us a bit about your recent trip abroad, and let's hear what's in store with Maria for the remainder of this year.
All right, well, thank you, and thank you all for being with us this evening. Yes, I have returned. I was doing a tour with the World Rugby Women in Leadership Development Scholarship. I visited England, Wales, Botswana, and South Africa, and I was able to work with a lot of amazing people over there. I was able to attend the International Working Group Conference on Sports and Women, and that was in Botswana. That was an amazing experience to network with a lot of women in sport, but also men were in attendance. So the support for the movement of women in sport, as well as, alongside with men, and really getting to a point where there's parity in sport is very important. And I'm inspired to see that how we're really making progress in that area.
Well said. And quickly, just to mention, this coming Saturday at 4 p.m., St. Mary's College Ground. Remember, Trinidad and Tobago versus USA, men's 15 rugby. And on Sunday, it's going to be a weekend of rugby. There is beach rugby in Mayaro. So we're going to keep you updated during the course of this program as to the time of these events. Let me introduce my guest for today. And he's been referred to by Maria as the encyclopedia of rugby. Mr. Vern, the technical director of the Trinidad and Tobago Police rugby team, men, women, and youths. And he's going to give us a complete update version of where rugby was and where rugby is today. So let me welcome Mr. Ross. It's a pleasure.
Nice having you. Let me say a pleasant good night to all the viewers, and pleasant good night to all the viewers, and let's hope that I can live up to the
reputation,
the reputation that Maria has set for me, the encyclopedia of rugby. Yeah, so I hope that I can do justice to that little name that she has given me there.
But that's why I'm leaving it up to her to start the ball rolling.
I am confident that you will do so. I know from experience that you have a lot of answers, a lot of information, and every time I speak with you, there's something new that I'm learning. To start out with, I know it's been 51 years that you have been involved in rugby in Trinidad and Tobago. What did getting into rugby look like 51 years ago?
51 years ago, the game was small. The following was different. The way you got into rugby was largely different. I recall that, I was living in Europe at that time in 1967. I was passing through the University of the West Indies occasionally and seeing the guys playing this game on the field and wondering how I could get into that. And there was no way, there was no youth program, so I had to wait until an invitation was extended to me. The invitation came from one of the players, his name Ramesh Sivaran Singh. We used to call him Docs. So he invited me one day, it was a Thursday afternoon, to come and play some rugby, and The only thing I didn't do was lift him and hug him and kiss him up and so on and so on. That's the extent to which I was eager to get into the game. So I got involved on that Thursday in 67, and it's been a love affair with the game from then till now.
I know that you've been an integral part of a lot of beginnings in rugby. I don't know if you want to take the lead, because there's probably beginnings I don't even know about. Specifically, I could refer to the women's team and when that team came together and played their first international match.
The women's game, actually, what I call the modern era, or the serious era of women's rugby, we can date it back to 1996, and the individual who served as a catalyst for that, her name Stacey Stevenson. She was attending the San Juan Government Secondary School at the time. She came to me with a request. She wanted to get involved in rugby. So I said to her, okay, Stacey, but you're the only person, the only female who has come with that request, so you have the responsibility to go and get others involved. And she went, she got others involved. By the time she came to me to get the process started, she had switched to El Dorado, what we called El Dorado Blue, which is now called El Dorado East Secondary. And so we got the thing rolling. I was coaching at UE Rugby Club at the time, so that UE has the distinction of being the first club to have actually a women's rugby team. That goes to UE 1996. And so it started from there.
Not cutting you there, but Vern Ross in rugby, you played the sport?
Yes, I played. I played from 67. I think I played up to 99, which I should not have been doing anyway. But I played. I had the distinction of, with all 135 pounds of me, 5 feet 8 inches, I played fullback for Trinidad and Tobago. Okay. At that time, you know, you had a lot of giants in the game, so it was pretty unusual for me to make the team, and to make the team as the last line of defense at fullback position. But I earned the name Wire. Okay. So my nickname became Wire because of my size.
Getting into a sport so physical, as you said, 135 pounds, you know, being labeled Wire, and you have all these giants. What went through your mind to get in a sport like that, knowing the physicality of the game?
For me, I think it was the need to satisfy that I had to prove in some way that, you know, small in body but big in heart, big in mind. I had to make that statement.
The Wire was strong.
The Wire was strong.
Yeah.
And in my past, you know, I played football, cricket. I played a bit of everything that there was to play. I got involved in boxing. I did a bit of community wrestling, you know, so there's a lot of rough and tumble inside of me.
You were associated with Maria for a little while now.
Right?
You were associated with Maria for a little while now because of the rugby, right?
Yes, yes.
Because I noticed you said you played rugby and you dabbled in boxing. And I was talking to her some time back, and she had that idea too. She wanted to try boxing, so I'm trying to see the connection.
Well, yeah, probably, you know, the spirit, the kindred spirit.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
But so that, you know, for me, rugby was actually the area, the space where all of this past involvement in all of these rough and tumble activities, where everything came together. Because even, you know, yesterday I was on the ground coaching the My Lad boys, and I was trying to get across a point to them, the use of the hands in moving the ball from player to player. And I went back to cricket, and I had to get them to understand that when you're making that forward defensive stroke in cricket, the way you're using your hand, it's almost the same way you use your hands when you're passing the ball, you know. Okay. So that all of that background and that wide range of activity served me in good stead when I got into rugby. I think it was leading me to rugby ineluctably.
It's an interesting point that you make, that within rugby you could find connections between all of the different sports that you've participated in and contributed to. Would you say that that is one of the main reasons that rugby captures players I know a lot of people in rugby have done many sports. I personally have done many sports. I started playing rugby late, but when I began playing rugby, something just clicked and I became a rugby player. And I don't think that necessarily has to do with your level of talent, skill, the years that you've played. You find that a lot of players, they just become rugby players. Would you say that that's a contributing factor? And what else do you think contributes to that?
Well, essentially, now, what I like to do is I like to go to that mental space because that's where everything happens. You know that little prayer we say, thy will be done on earth as it is done in heaven. So that heaven for me is that mental space. And that's where everything begins. The body is just the tool that is used for execution, but it begins upstairs here. And the way I see rugby, this is how I put it. I say there are no more battles to be fought, no more mountains to climb and conquer, no more valleys to explore, so we play rugby. So it satisfies in us that passion for adventure. That's what rugby does. That's what it did for me, and I rather suspect that for the people who play it, that is what it does for them too. That passion for adventure, exploration, we find it in rugby because rugby puts us in a place where we are actually confronted with ourselves all the time. We are actually exploring ourselves all the time, looking to expand our boundaries, our personal boundaries all the time. How much can we take all the time? That's how I see the game and my participation in it.
What makes a good rugby player? From looking back at your experience in the sport, what would you say that you can look at someone, male or female, and identify and say they are going to be a good rugby player?
Right. Well, for me, again, to the mental space, you have somebody who is cool, somebody who can be cool under pressure. You have somebody who is quick in making critical decisions. Those are some of the basics. I define rugby as high-speed chess. So to me, it is important that the person is able to think quickly and make the appropriate decision under pressure. After that, my own participation in the game suggests to me that the body type, although it is important, if the body type is lacking in physique and those other things, speed and strength, power, etc., if you're lacking in that, you can make up for that if the mind is working in the right way.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of focus on sevens. We have fives for beach rugby. We've been playing 10s where there aren't enough players for 15s. And then there's 15s rugby. How would you compare the game? Do you think that it's all classified under rugby, that it's all equally rugby? Do you think there are different things that you gain from the different types of the sport?
Of course, if you look at, let's compare the 7-a-side game to the 15-a-side game. Let's compare T20 cricket to Test cricket. You're in two different zones here. The requirement to think in the 7-a-side game, you can explore things. It's a faster paced game. In the 7-a-side, in the 15-a-side game now, you can take your time and build and really probe and reset and probe and reset. You have the time for that. But in the 7-a-side game, you don't have the facility of all that amount of time.
That's when the mental game comes in.
Yeah, that has to happen quickly. Whatever you're doing, it has to happen quickly. So the type of athlete you require for the 7-a-side game has to be, that program has to be different. That program has to be more explosive, more dynamic.
So you might get somebody playing 7s, but they might not be able to play 15s.
To play 15s, yeah. And the 15s player might not be easily adaptable to play the 7-a-side game. It's very much like cricket. But it begins upstairs. It's the upstairs game. It's a mental thing.
So within Trinidad and Tobago, when we are recruiting players, what sort of tactics do you use, and do you identify where you think a player is going to be most adept first, or is it how do you get them into the game and how do you recruit them into rugby?
Well, we have the problem in Trinidad that we have to take whatever we get first. We can't be too serious. The fraternity is small, and uncomfortably small. Let me put it that way. And therefore, we don't have this this facility that we can pick and choose too much. So we have to take what we get. We have to do the analysis. If you understand the game and you understand the coaching, then you get to the point where you realize that every position, the flanker, the forward, the back, every position, there's a mental disposition, a kind of way of thinking that suits you for that position. So a guy might have speed, but the speed might suit him to play a wing. The speed might not suit him to play a flanker, because a flanker has a flanker is a predator. He's the action man. Wherever the ball is, he wants to be. It's what in football we used to call a ball peon, or a ball hoop. That's the flanker. He has that kind of mental disposition, and the coach has to do that observation and then make that fit. That's how I operate anyway. Yeah.
So then that puts, I guess, a lot, I don't want to say more responsibility, but for coaches, how do you think coaches can adapt to taking what they can get and creating players that are really valuable and productive?
Yes. Well, a coach is a special kind of creature. Yeah? A coach is a special guy. A coach is a magician. A coach is a transforming person kind of thing. You know, so the challenge is, a guy comes to you, he has a particular kind of built. He's built in a particular way, but his mind is working in a way that is quite opposite to his structure. For instance, a guy he's big, naturally big. So you might decide, okay, that's a prop. But when the guy is operating, you can detect that, you know, if we shave off a few of the pounds, he could make a second row or you know, a center or something, because he has the handling skills, he has this vision, he has the way he sees the game. So you're seeing that. So the challenge for the coach now is to resist the temptation to just push, because he's big, put him as a prop. And let's work hard on him, get him down a bit, lose a couple of pounds, and put him where mentally he's best suited so that we can reap real benefits out of him in the right position. That's the kind of thing that coaches have to be.
I want to jump in here. You were with UE and then you went across the police, right? Or you did other stints with
right.
before?
But that's an easy way of saying it. Anyway, so I started at UE.
Yeah.
Right? In about 76, 77, I made a decision to join the police service. And so the police service did not have a team, but there were a number of policemen playing for different clubs. Okay. So then is when I decided, you know, perhaps let's form the police rugby team. And so then I started to play coach, captain police rugby team. Yeah. Left the service in 91 and was just freelancing around, coaching in primary schools, secondary schools, that kind of thing. After a while, I was called back, I think in 95. UE came, they called me back to come assist in, you know, recalibrating the club. So I went and I did that, spent a couple of years there. In 97, there was, they developed a little dispute, a kind of variance in terms of philosophical approaches to how the club should move forward. So I left UE, and in 98, we formed what was called the Eastern Graduates. Eastern Graduates because we were from the East, and a group of us had left the university team, so we saw ourselves as graduates of UE, so we called the club the Eastern Graduates. I mean, we were so careful about that thing that even the jersey that we wore, we styled it for it to look like a graduation gown, you know. But you know, I always look back to the UE years, and I like what I did at UE. I love what I did at police, and I have a tremendous fondness for what I did at Eastern Graduates. I think when I look back in time, if I have to pull any little period out of my existence as a rugby player and give it pride of place, I would give that to Eastern Graduates.
We have a lot more questions for you when we get back, but we need to take a break.
Yeah.
Viewers, you're in Scoreboard here on ACTN. We're talking rugby, and we'll be right back after the short break. You're now changing your question.
What I would say, Steve, is this.
My first question was, and roll back that tape.
I made my debut for Crystal Palace against Tottenham Hotspur.
My responsibility was to get the ball and make things happen offensively.
In all the time we've played together, I've always been the decoy. Welcome to Field of Dreams on ACTN. My name is Steve David, and I'm your host.
Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome to another edition of Scoreboard here on ACT, and it's always a pleasure to be in your company every Tuesday evening between the hours of 8 and 9.
Welcome to the new season of Football 101. I am your host, Joshua DeMatos.
Well, it's time for your weekly football news update. I love you, Messi.
Unfortunately, kiss the badge, kiss the badge. Oh, what's that? Welcome to this edition of The Interview, and as you can see, I'm not alone on the set. I have Marcus, a Liverpool fan, and I have Shakir.
Welcome back to Scoreboard. We are here with Vern Ross and testing my theory that he is in fact the Trinidad and Tobago encyclopedia for rugby. So far, we have not been disappointed. We could test him out a little bit with some lesser known facts, perhaps, and see if we can learn a little bit about the history of the administration in rugby in Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, here we go again. All right. The administration now is a bit different also from what it was back then. But the dividing year is 1975. Before 1975, we had what was called the Union, Trinidad and Tobago Rugby Football Union. But the union did not provide for the one club, one vote process that we have now. So although we called it the union and the expectation was that every club would have the equal access to democratic processes, that was not the case. In 1975, there was a movement, and Gregory Rousseau spearheaded that movement for the democratization of the fraternity. Okay. And that action resulted in a new constitution and new constitutional approaches to the administration of rugby as we know it. So that has come down to us now up to this year. That's the formula that we've been using. One club, one vote, and the question of the representation for the annual general meeting and all of those things. Yeah.
So with the one club, one vote, how do the clubs know what's going on? How do they find out information? What are the channels for that happening so that the democracy is an informed democracy? Right.
So the thing would be that you have your representatives to come to the monthly meetings where, okay, the main decisions would be made. Let's say the policy decisions, you'd make that at the AGM level, right? You have the executive committee, which is responsible for the day-to-day operation of the fraternity. And of course, the executive committee operates for and on behalf of the management committee. Okay. And the management committee meeting is where the big decisions now happen. And of course, those big decisions have to be consonant with what happened at the AGM level. So that the management committee is actually the executive plus representative of all the clubs, financial members of the...
Now, you said 51 years you have been in the sport of rugby.
Yeah.
How has rugby grown within that period of time from then to now? Are there a major, development in the sport? How has the sport grown and in what areas?
All right. Well, it's a difficult story to tell, and it's a difficult story because we have we've not always used the ideas that could sustain the growth that we want to see. For instance, when I started in '67, we had a lot more clubs involved in the game. There were a lot more schools involved in the game in '67. Yeah? Some of the clubs that existed then, for instance, you had in the south, you had the Growlers, the Exiles. Yes, in the north, you had the regulars that we see now. But you had some clubs that have fallen through the cracks. So you had a club that came up, Warriors, that existed for a while and went through. You had Guevaras, you had Falcons. Guevaras, Falcons eventually came together and you know, they now under Harvard. You know, so you had all those changes. But in the past, the rugby was, in my view, a bit more prosperous than it is now. What has happened is we've gone through periods of flux and you know, the game has risen and then it has fallen again. So you had that up and down kind of progression through the game. There was a time when schools rugby was very vibrant. I remember the highest we've reached is in 1999. We had about 33 schools in schools rugby. And we've not been able to sustain that or to replicate it. You know, and that is fundamental to the growth and development of the whole game, because schools rugby is supposed to be the platform, the incubator, the kind of feeding ground for the clubs, etc. You know, so there have been a lot of challenges. If you talk to a lot of the old timers, and this is not, being an old timer is a difficult.
Yeah, you have to be careful using that old timer word. People might,
so
yeah.
Being a senior,
that's it.
being a senior person around the rugby, it's challenging, because you know, we always look back at our time and refer to our time as the golden era. Our time is always the best time that the game had. You know, but if you look at it objectively, you cannot but agree that, you know, we've not gone to that place where we are supposed to be. And we've not gotten to that place as yet because I was just, before we went on, I was just making the point to Maria that we have not as yet created the product. We've not as yet created the product.
But how can we create that product?
Well, I think it has to do with the ideas that we use, the ideas that we're using to push the game forward. Now, my view is that, you know, we're involved in a kind of incestuous relationship in rugby. For instance, you can't coach if you didn't play. You know, you can't referee if you didn't play. And, well, we haven't spoken that. That's not a written philosophy, but if you look at how the operation happens, how the process unfolds, you can't help but suggest to somebody that, you know, there's something incestuous about the way we are proceeding. So on Saturday we were having a little discussion. I'm making the point that we're not going to get a Rasta Rasavinji in our refereeing society, because we're not. If we take a group of youngsters, let's say I go to a group of youngsters and I say, okay, you guys are 10 years old, let's get into rugby. At no point in time will I suggest to them that, you know, okay, let's do a special program for them. Let's call the program Sport Leaders Rugby. So from the time we touch you, we teach you how to play. We find a way to teach you how to coach, introduce you to coaching. We find a way to teach you how to officiate, introduce you to refereeing. And we find a way how to teach you to administration. So we give you a little program on club administration. At 10, 12 years old, we empower you with that kind of information.
So you have a choice.
So you have a choice, because I will start off the game wanting to be this big superstar. But something happens and I can't realize that dream. But I have in my background now how to referee, how to coach, how to administrate a club. so I can fall back. I still want to be involved in rugby, so I have 3 other options that I can use to maintain my existence in the game, kind of thing, you know. So these are little things that we have to start thinking about these things, because although I said in 75 the game became more of a democracy, I will say now that there is still the need to pursue democratization of the game and sustainability of the game. And when I say democratization now, I'm talking about the fact that the game should be available to whomever wants to play it wherever they are. That's what I mean by democratization. So if there's a guy in Turku, years ago, I remember Nestor Vincent. And I remember him because when we took, in 2001, I think it was, when we took the game, the rural development program we had, and we had a venue in Maruga, in Marak, Maruga. And when I went down there to do the workshop, Nestor Vincent, he was an SRP at the time, he approached me and he said, "Oh, you know, bringing this game down here, boy, you know how long I want to get involved in this game?" So that's the case. And I would suggest that there are thousands of Nestor Vincents all over this country. There are people who want to play this game because this for them is their final frontier. There are people who want to get involved. But we're not putting the game easily accessible or at their disposal.
Because when I went down a couple of weeks back to Marak for the sports, TTOC Sports Talent Rugby program that up there, my question was to them was that, okay, you're into Marak, you bring in the sport, you identify 3 players with potential. These guys not working. They live at Marak. How are you going to get them now more developed into the sport?
And that's the issue. That speaks to the issue of sustainability. In 1995, Royal Lands Rugby Club was celebrating their 30th anniversary. And they invited me to be part of a panel to discuss the way forward for rugby. My position, from the time I joined this game and had the first experience of it, my position was always regionalization. Let's get the game all over. Listen, my great desire is this. When a child is born, especially a boy, the father must not automatically go down to the sports store and buy a football. When he gets to the sports store, he must ponder for a while. Should I buy the wrong ball or the egg-shaped ball?
That's true, you know. Anytime the first thing is buy a football.
A football. And so I am saying that we in the fraternity are to blame for that. We have not been aggressive enough
with the sport.
in understanding there's a market out there. There are a set of people out there who want to, this is the only game that can bring them to that little place inside of their heart where they feel fulfilled. Rugby is it for a lot of people, but we are depriving them of that experience.
I guess some ball recently, and I feel I had to call back for that whole and that football.
Yeah. So I'm saying the question of sustainability, I made the point then that you know, we have to get the game out into all the regions. Now we are having something in Mayaro next weekend, right?
Yeah, that's Sunday, the 7th.
Right.
17th.
But here's the challenge, right? And this is real life now. The economics of the situation always acts against the spread of the game. Always, the economics of the situation, right? So I am in Grandy, and I have to come to Port of Spain with a team to play any of the Port of Spain teams. So I have to look for $750 to pay a maxi. And if I have to do that 5 times for the year, that's 750 multiplied by 5. Now, once you understand the demographics of the people who in the outlying districts who play this game, you will understand the significance of $750 to that little group of people. That's a major outlay for them. 750 once, and if they have to do it twice, you know. So how do we beat that problem? It's nice to have the group in Mayaro and the group in, you know, but I'm saying that to make it more sustainable, we have to get to the point where instead of one group in Mayaro, let's put resources and develop teams in Mayaro. Let's do that, develop teams. So for this season, They play among themselves. And the winner from up that side just has to come out now to play the winner from down this side and the winner from...
And then you have a wider pool
from which to draw your athletes.
Yes, yes.
You see? So, and that's part of the challenge for the game at the national level too. The pool from which we are drawing is too small. We are missing out on... Imagine if nobody went up to the countryside and there would be no Ian Bishop known to us now. There would be no Keyshawn Walcott known to us now.
A lot of other sports.
And a lot of other people like that, you know. So I'm saying that, you know, let's go out, let's spread the game out, let's do programs, let's divide up the country into development regions. Let's put somebody in charge, you know, Kurt Quashie, you in charge of Region 1. Your responsibility is this. You have to do their schools, their primary schools, their secondary schools, their civil groups, and so on in your region. Let's see how you can spread the game among them. Let's spread it out. Let's get away from this Port of Spain centric. Let's let the people in Port of Spain know that Trinidad exists beyond the lighthouse. That's the lesson they need to learn. You know.
No, there's no rugby present in primary schools, right?
No, nothing.
So
well. Put a pause there.
Right.
I rather suspect that Rudolph Jack might be doing some rugby with primary schools in his region. I know that I am currently doing some rugby with the primary school in my area. That's the Santa Rosa Government Primary School. I'm working with them.
Because before we take another break, the point what I was trying to bring is that I always believe in sports, you need to start at a younger age.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because when you start at secondary schools, 16, 17, 18,
that's too late.
There's a whole gap there.
Yeah, that's too late.
And sometimes you don't get the result from the athlete at 16, 17.
Well, let me just support your point by making a direct example, right? You have the Panto plan, right? So you have Nicolette, you have Leon, and Jeron, right? This is just examples, right? They started very early, right? They're still young people. But there's a kind of a ease, a kind of a way of seeing the game that you can't get it if you don't start that early. So here what our problem has been over the years. We put together an under-19 team, and most of those boys at under 19, they're going into competition with 2 years, 3 years maximum in the game. You come up against an Australian under 19, those boys started tossing this ball around at age 5.
You're always at a disadvantage.
So you're at a disadvantage. You are at a disadvantage. There are some nuances of this game that you cannot, you just can't get it with 2 years in your background. No, you can't get it.
Well, viewers, as we continue talking to the man himself, Vern on the history of rugby, we need to take a break. We'll be right back. We'll continue this discussion.
You're now changing your question.
What I would say, Steve, is this.
My first question was, and roll back that tape.
I made my debut for Crystal Palace against Tottenham Hotspur.
My responsibility was to get the ball and make things happen offensively.
In all the time we've played together, I've always been the decoy. Welcome to Field of Dreams on ACTN. My name is Steve David, and I'm your host.
Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome to another edition of Scoreboard here on ACT, and it's always a pleasure to be in your company every Tuesday evening between the hours of 8 and 9.
Welcome to the new season of Football 101. I am your host, Joshua DeMatos.
Well, it's time for your weekly football news update. I love you, Messi.
Unfortunately,
kiss the badge, kiss the badge. Oh,
what's that?
Welcome to this edition of The Interview, and as you can see, I'm not alone on the set. I have Marcus, a Liverpool fan, and I have Shakir.
Welcome back. We were just discussing the importance of starting sport, and in our case, for this show, rugby, as early as possible, and the effects of, well, I'll use the term long-term athlete development, and the benefits that it has when you have children who have grown up in a sport versus children who are now trying to learn a sport. We were trying to figure out and think about who is doing work in primary schools, and I would like to take an opportunity to say that School of Rugby is actually doing work in preschools. So there is the movement happening now where rugby is getting younger and younger, and we are finding ways to introduce the sport at a younger age. Coach Ross, can you, besides just the physical aspect, you can tell us a little bit about the physical aspect as well, but what difference do you think and what gains for people who are perhaps not as involved in sport are there from starting a sport so young?
I think that there are several things that you learn from getting involved in sport, especially I would suggest a team sport, because there's a social side of everything that you do. Yes, so that you come to a team coaching session, you come to the team position, and you learn things like taking your turn. You learn things like cooperating, working with others. You're competing because at the end of the day, everybody wants to be on the team that is selected. But you learn how to collaborate while you're competing. So it's not an all-out, vicious kind of competing that you're competing. You're competing with a sense of respect for the person who you're competing against. And I think that's fundamental in sport, that a youngster learns that the person whom he's competing against, whom he or she's competing against, is not an enemy. You view that person you're competing against as a sounding board against which you have an opportunity to test your talents, to test your skills. So that's an important learning. We talk a lot about the benefit of sport participation in terms of development of the right kind of youngster, etc., etc. But we need to be cautious of the fact that there's something about the process that the youngster is exposed to that is also important, not just the sport itself, whatever it might be, football, cricket, hockey, whatever. But there's something important about the process and the persons who are going to engage the process with the youngster. Those things are important parts of the development also.
We want to touch a bit about your association with the police rugby teams, especially the women who have been really one of the leading clubs by way of winning tournaments in the country. Tell us about your teams.
Good. Well, remember that my activity, my participation with police goes back to 1970. The police rugby section was actually formed on the 20th of October 1978. So every year we celebrate with a seven-a-side tournament. And I stayed with them until 91 when I left the service. But for some reason, every time they find themselves in a little patch, they always call me back to assist.
They call for the best.
Yeah, well, okay. I'm sorry to agree so quickly. Anyway, but they call me back to assist. So I go back and I give my time and so on. This last occasions, I think the engagement started in 2015, either 2015 or 2014. I can't be too sure. But what I do know is that when I got to the team, I have this view of the game, as I said before, that it is high-speed chess. So in chess, you have to probe and reset. In chess, you have to be patient. You have to consider the effects of one move, 3 moves down the line. So you're always anticipating action and anticipating results of one action. So that's my approach to things. So I try to get that into the thinking of the players. For instance, there's a joke we always have around the team when we're coaching. I used to tell them, the absolutely beautiful thing about thinking is that it is absolutely free. You don't have to pay to think. So just go ahead and think. Yeah. Just go ahead and think. The only downside is that the result of your thinking does not, there's no guarantee that you're going to come up with the correct result. But that's the only downside. But go ahead and think. So that's how I encourage the players, think about what you're doing. Think about what you're doing. It's not just big and strong, knock them down. That's not the nature of the game. See the game differently. See it from a management perspective. It's a set of problems that we are challenged with, and we have to come up with appropriate solutions at each stage. The notion is, in each situation, there's a gain line, and our job is to take the ball across that gain line, ensure that we're in control of the situation, and we have a quality situation. And that's how I got the guys to play the game. The women team, we've had major success with the women team because we've had a women's team to deal with. We've had the players to prepare to go into competition. And the way we've, our patterns, our rhythms, everybody understands that. The men team has not been, very fortunate so far because we've not had the numbers to train and to put on the field. So that the men, it is still a working process. We're still developing on that side. If I get, I'm confident, a coach has to be confident, and I'm completely confident in what I do. I've been doing it since 1971, which is 47 years now. So I'm very confident in what I do. And I say to guys all the time, as long as I can get 15 bodies to put on the field, we're in business. My focus, I learned this from my mentor in coaching. His name was Dan Chalmers. And he said to me over and over, you don't have to be fancy, Vern. Your team just has to have a solid defense. And so all the time when I'm thinking, when I'm planning, I plan from that perspective. The victory will come out of the defense. Yeah. That's where it begins. Solid defense, we're in business. Yeah.
So when you look at the both teams, I'm going to play the devil's advocate here. Which is the better team, the men's team or the women's team?
Well, if we're talking results,
if we're talking... Careful there, because we have to go back and coach both teams.
Yes,
so choose the words rightly. Yeah.
Right, so I'm going to try that. If we're basing that on results, just results, well, the women's team has been the better performing team because they're undefeated in tens for the last 3 years, both league and knockout. So they're undefeated. They lost a couple of seven-a-side games, but last year they were able to win the seven-a-side.
As well as the tens.
The tens, right? So they've been performing well. The men's team, on the other hand, remember that the challenge for the men's team is the question of the numbers, getting the numbers out. The numbers out to train and the numbers out to play games. I'm saying that this year we are likely to have a solid group on the field. And once that can happen, the men will rise. I have no, rugby is a very simple thing. A lot of people focus on a lot of fancy moves and, a big playbook. And I don't go that way.
Old school.
I prepare all the players, give them all the skills and a basic plan. This is what we're doing on offense. This is what we're doing on defense. There's no big playbook. Just go out there and play rugby. The most important thing, the most important instruction I give to my players when we take the field is this. Very simple. Establish your tackle line and ensure that nobody breaches that tackle line. Full stop. Once that happens, we're in business.
Looking back at your career, what moment you cherish and hold dear to your heart?
Well, you have a lot of moments come true. I think back at times like this. I remember with Eastern graduates, we were playing a game against Northerns. The score at halftime was 22-0 to Northerns. At halftime, we were able to get a full team on the field. and we inched ourselves back into that game. The last minute of the game, last 2 minutes of the game, the score was 27-22 to Northerns. All right? So we got hold of the ball, and for about 35-40 meters, we decided that we were doing one thing. It was rock and rock and rock. And we rocked for 40 meters or thereabouts, right into Northern's in-goal area, scored the try. The kicker was Jerome O'Brien. And I turned to Jerome. I was on the field with the guys. I turned to Jerome and I said, Jerome, we won 2 points and we win this game. Your foot will do it. Yes, coach. He got there, kicked the 2 points for us. They won the game 29-27. And of course, well, there was a kind of sadistic pleasure in watching the Northern's heads drop. And but we remember that because that 40-meter drive was, you know, it spoke about discipline. It spoke about understanding the moment. It spoke about doing everything possible to manage that moment to the final outcome. And that's what was important for me in that thing there. And it shows what we can do. That's what it was about. It showed us and it showed me what we can do. And as a coach, I say to people all the time that coaching, you can think about a lot of things about coaching. But for me, the most important thing about coaching is transformation. How do I take an ordinary player and then with a couple of words and a couple of, you know, skills and so on, refinement and so on, how do I turn that into a warrior? That's what coaching to me is about. And how do I get Maria? Because everybody who comes to you with one objective in mind. There's a little space inside of my heart that I have not as yet experienced. Coach, I feel you could do it for me. That's what everybody comes to you with, that simple request. And that's what I think is the most important thing about coaching.
Maria?
What is the legacy that you are creating? I think that it's going to continue. So I won't say that in the past tense. What is the legacy you're creating and gift that you're imparting on your players and even, not even your players, but the community of rugby as a whole?
Right. Well, listen, I work on simple things, right? My whole coaching career has been, and playing career has been based on simple things. The love for the game, mutual respect. Those are the two pillars. So I tell players all the time that, you know, we have to respect each other. There's no reason, nobody must lead you to believe that to be a rugby player, you have to be foul-mouthed. You have to be swearing and that sort of thing. I think it's very basic that we have to respect each other. We have to respect each other. Love is not as important as respect. Respect is the most important human value that you could inculcate in people, right? Because I can say I love you and I can just as easily disrespect you in several ways, you know? So I emphasize, let's respect each other. And I emphasize to players, hey, let's show the passion. Let's show that we love this game, the passion for it. With respect to what I would like to see, from the time, as I said before, from the time I experienced this game, I realized the potential of the game to change lives, to give people the kind of experience that, you know, you might get from when you go to a religious crusade, that kind of experience that, you know, I feel that the game has that power to give that to players. And I feel that there are a number of people who are looking for that. So I would like to see the game really played in every nook and cranny of Trinidad and Tobago. I would like to see everybody, total democratization of the sport. That's what I would like to see. I feel that as an individual, I've already made, you know, significant contributions to the game. I served as player, I served as referee, I served as coach, I served as administrator, I served as sport ambassador when I represented my country, right? I was secretary of the union for a while, not a very long while, because, you know, I think it was in 88, and probably by 89, I had resigned on a matter of principle. That's the guy I am. I'm not interested in holding any position just to walk around the place and say, I'm Secretary of the Union, that kind of thing. Once we come to a point where there's a principle involved and my principle is defeated, I have no other use. I'm wasted. I'm gone. Right? But that did not stop me from continuing the crusade through the game, you know. In 88 also was the year that I developed the TAGB program, which a lot of people don't know, but it was the first time that a completely non-contact version of the game was actually used for the specific purpose of introducing youngsters to the game. The first time anywhere on the planet.
Well, Maria, you said in the opening an encyclopedia.
Yes.
And he got 99.9% correct. There's only 1 year during the whole interview he said he wasn't sure of.
Right.
All the rest of years and names and everything.
I wonder what happened in that year.
Yes, so you are indeed an encyclopedia in the sport of rugby. We want to thank you very much for, I know there is still a lot more that we can talk about, and I hope that somewhere down the road we can invite you to come back and have further discussions. But we really appreciate this time, you know, chatting with you.
Okay, and I'm glad that you have invited me to come. I hope that I really lived up to your expectations, and I hope that the viewers would find something of interest in what I've said.
Maria, any closing comments?
I would just like to thank you again for coming and for all of your work in the rugby community. We're looking forward to learning more about and meeting some of the police players, male, female, and the Milat boys as well. I know there's some exciting things coming up there. You've made this hour seem very, very short. A lot of times we wonder, how do you fill up the time? But I knew that we wouldn't have a problem with you on the show. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to all the viewers for joining us tonight.
Well, we have come to the end of another Scoreboard. We're talking rugby. Remember, if you missed any part of this program, there's a repeat tomorrow at 1 p.m. But before we wrap, we just want to remind you that this Saturday, the 16th at St. Mary's Ground, our Rugby 15 Trinidad and Tobago versus USA. And on Sunday at Church Street in Miaro, 5-a-side beach rugby. Please go out and support the sport of rugby. Again, we want to thank Mr. Vern Ross and also Maria for spending this time with us. And we look forward to joining you at another edition of Scoreboard right here on this channel, 8 p.m. See you. Have a blessed week ahead.
Thank you.